I'm Nathan Ponchard, this is Chasing Cars, and this is Volvo's new electric SUV flagship, the EX90. It is a 7-seater riding on the SPA2 platform shared with the Polestar 3, but unlike the Polestar 3, it is a 7-seater only for Australia, not a 5-seater, meaning it's a bit more of a family vehicle, clearly inspired stylistically by the XC90 predecessor, which was combustion engine or plug-in hybrid, and which will continue in some variants in some markets. This, however, is the flagship. Its basics include a 2985mm wheelbase, the same dual chamber air suspension, adaptive air suspension as with the Polestar 3. It has the same rear axle that has full torque vectoring from left or right wheel, all similar hardware and architecture, software underneath. It's all the same. It's just a completely different body developed by a different team. Now, stats-wise, the X90, 111 kilowatt-hour battery, 0 to 100 in 4.9 seconds, 380 kilowatts, 910 newton meters, 10 to 80% charge in around 30 minutes, weighs around 2,700 kilos. This car here is the top spec EX90 Ultra Performance, meaning the dual motor with 22-inch wheels in this case, and all the bells and whistles, as we shall discover when we get inside.
Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car.
Brought to you by
In here, clearly, it's a Volvo aesthetic. It still has the portrait touchscreen like the previous XC90 does, and actually like the Polestar 3 does, because sharing the architecture means they share their hardware underneath, both hardware and software. So this is the Volvo version of the Polestar version. And while it isn't quite as slick, I think in some areas, certainly to be able to change the suspension, for example, you have to go car, settings, driving, view all, and then we've got steering feel soft and firm, suspension feel soft and firm, the one pedal driving, which is full one pedal driving in this vehicle. That sort of stuff is a little bit more complex than it needs to be, but the architecture with the software is not finished yet and it can be adjusted with an over-the-air update, and we hope that happens. Otherwise, it's all pretty easy. The stuff is here. You do need to do things like or we have performance all-wheel drive in this case, which is just a button and easily accessible, but to do the driver adjustments, side mirrors, steering wheel adjustment, head-up display is all done digitally like it is in the Polestars as well, which you do get used to, and if you own the car you only need to do it once. The rest of the interior, the wheel is really nice and small. It's not big and fat like some of these minis we've had lately. It's just nice and thin. It is 3 turns lock to lock for an 11.8 meter turning circle, so it's not about being super sporty, but as you shall discover when we drive, it is actually quite a competent driving vehicle given how big it is and its purpose. The rest of the interior, I think, is pretty nice. It's all pretty nicely finished. I love this light colored wood here, the stitching on the top of the dash. This car is fitted with a top spec stereo, which is optional, but it's a 25 speaker, 1610 watt Bowers & Wilkins system with this great sort of eyeball tweeter in the middle here. Love these sort of metallicized speaker grills in the doors. In terms of functionality, this is their supplied water bottle. This does not fit in the door. It just sits in at a weird angle or lies down. The doors, does it even take? It takes a tiny 600ml bottle. That's all it's good for. In the center here, got 2 cup holders there. We've got a carpeted tray down here with a little elasticized band to hold something in it down there. 2 USB-C chargers. It's all sort of fairly good. These air vents here aren't hidden like some of the Polestars. They're actually easily accessible. We've got a row of cloth along the dash here. There's a really nice finish about the interior. This one here is fitted with wool seats too, and the wool is from a sheep. They said it's humanely sourced, which means they put the sheep on like a downy pillow when it lies down, so then it can be shorn so it's not pressing into the ground, I presume. And it's mixed with polyester, which is also 100% recycled. So there's a degree of eco-friendliness about this very heavy, large 7-seater. The seats themselves, they're Volvo seats, they're great. Cushy headrests, one dial to adjust all of them at the side. They're really easy to use. Most of the functionality, aside from what I mentioned about the drive modes, which you get used to, and this little screen here, even with the views, just one button on the steering wheel, is all actually really good. And whatever mode you leave the suspension on, and if you leave the lane keeping off, for example, next time you start the vehicle, the EX90 remembers where you were and gives you the same. You don't have to start again. Being a 7-seater, the second row is also just as important as in the front row, and here we have 3 individual seats on individual sliders with individually adjustable backrests. The outer 2 are better than the middle, but it doesn't mean that this one is uncomfortable. These ones actually are a little bit thin in the base. I think if you're a larger framed child or adult, you might find yourself expanding a little bit into the, or encroaching on the person next to you, but it is adjustable from all the way here right back to here. You can do the backrest down to there, not a huge amount, but it's reasonable. We have an armrest in the center here, which I will get out now, which has a little pair of pop-out cup holders. The seat trim, same as the front, that lovely wool blend stuff. Netted mat pockets, outside seat heating, center air vents, plus B-pillar air vents. We have adjustable temperature, individual for either side, 2 USB-C ports, fully flat floor, which is a great idea. That's why you get an EV. Again, pretty crapo door pockets. These are the only door grabs in the car. The Holden Kingswood door handles, which I love. And the same speaker grills as the front. No dip in quality between the front and the back in here. Still stitching across the tops of the doors. Lovely speaker grills. The nice sort of light coloured wood in here. It has a feeling of expense without feeling too expensive, if you get what I mean. It's nice. It's not a Bentley, but also it's pretty classy. And we also have a full glass roof here. And while it has tinting in this sort of just under 30-degree weather in California, it is still quite hot. So if there is an option at some point to be able to turn that, make it opaque and make it sort of less intrusive in summer, then I would definitely add that option. Okay, getting in the third row. It's not entirely suited for adults, but it is doable to a point. Kids, it should be fine. Grab the top of the seat, slide through. That is one click ahead of forward. I have my knees just pressing against it. I'm pressing into the side here. Do have air vents in the C-pillars. You have USB-C ports in back here. This is very much designed for children rather than adults. There is a really cool feature though in the door frame down here where you do have 2 buttons that you can press electrically, and that will flop both rear backrests down like so. Being a 7-seater and being a luxury SUV, we do have an electric tailgate here, and hopefully it doesn't hit me in the face because we're about to show that it has 324 litres of boot space behind the third row here, which includes what's under here, which is actually heaps. It has all of this space in here, and it also has this thing that looks a little bit like a potty or maybe a little sit bucket for kids. It does fit in the middle there, made out of polystyrene, and to get these down, like I showed you from the door frame before, you could also do it from the back, and drops those down, and when they're down completely, it is 669 litres up to the height of the rear seats, which is pretty good for a 5 metre long electric SUV. Being the slightly frumpier, more family oriented sister of the Polestar 3 means that the EX90 doesn't need to be as overtly sporting. I don't think it feels quite as suave overall dynamically as the Polestar 3, but at the same time it's dealing with more weight, it carries more people, and its vehicle type doesn't necessitate the fact that it needs to drive so distinctly sporting. That said, on these 22-inch wheels with the adaptive air suspension and with the soft and firm modes like I was mentioning in the car before, it actually treads quite a fine line between not being too soft and not being too firm, and usually that's always the case with these 2-setting suspensions, whereas this seems to move them closer together and find a sweeter spot. None of the steering modes in firm are particularly firm. It still is quite light here with this very small steering wheel that actually makes the EX90 feel a bit more wieldy than otherwise perhaps could be. The dynamics in general, I think, are more than satisfactory for what it needs to be. It hangs on well, and with those huge Pirelli Scorpion tyres, 295/35 R22 at the back and 265 at the front, this is very much set up like a performance SUV, and given that we're in the Ultra Performance, it certainly does what it says on the tin, even though there are no badges on the outside, just dual motor at the back. Now, the ride quality, again, treads a nice fine line between the two. It does have a degree of tyre thump, I suppose, over some of the joins on these Californian freeways, but given that it is riding on 22-inch wheels, it really does quite an impressive job of doing what a 7-seat SUV is meant to do, and that is absorbing hits for its passengers. In our driving here, we've averaged about 26 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. Currently we have 85% charge and it's showing 400 kilometers to empty. So that is reasonably competitive, I would say, for a vehicle like this. 600 kilometers WLTP is the claim. Whether it can achieve that or not, though, we'll need to test this back in Australia. The safety systems in the EX90 are to Volvo's usual standard. It does do a pretty good job of driving semi-autonomously on the freeway, although it will not do the steering for you for too long. It does a reasonably good job of it. Turning the lane keep off stays off when you restart the car again, like I've said, so that is actually a good thing, although generally it's reasonably subtle. It does a pretty good job of keeping you in your own lane. There's none of the snatch and grab here in this Swedish SUV, as you would expect for a brand with such a strong safety reputation as Volvo. Functionality wise, the left stalk just does the indicators and the lights. The right stalk is a gear change selector to get the car to accept adaptive cruise. Just pulse down and drive like that. All those controls are on the left wheel spoke. All the stuff on the right wheel spoke is for the stereo, and of the one we've got here, the optional Bowers and Wilkins, it is pretty freaking amazing. Someone said it made them cry. It was so nice. Although they may have been listening to Celine Dion, and that might have been the music choice, but that's not up to me to decide. Let us know what you think in the comments. The volume knob is just this big dial in the center here with play and pause on it. It actually is the easiest thing to control in the whole vehicle, so that's great. The rest of the interior, I think, probably doesn't quite hit home for me in a full luxury level. I think the doors make a little bit of a clang when you close them. I think they could sound nicer. The door storage with no bottle holders is just really, come on, stupid. It's 2024. That stuff should be more practical, and it doesn't have that. The other stuff in the interior I think works really well. Do I think the EX90 is as good or definitely a step beyond the XC90? I think in most areas, yes. I think dynamically, definitely, even though it weighs more than 2.5 tons. Whether it is a step up in terms of the whole interior finish and the feeling of luxury is up to personal opinion. I think the Polestars are a bit nicer inside, but then they do command a bit more money. And this is going to cost around similar price to what a dual motor Polestar 3 is going to cost in Australia, or perhaps a little bit less, but offer more seats and a bit more equipment. So it's up to you where your priorities lie, but you know, if you're buying a 7-seat SUV, really your only other choice here is a Kia EV9 for a little bit less, or a Mercedes EQS 7-seat SUV for quite a lot more. Scheduled to go on sale by the end of 2024, this top spec Ultra Performance is expected to start around $130,000 in Australia, although the pricing has not been confirmed by Volvo as we record this. It's moments away from being confirmed. There will be a lower spec model than this without the performance pack. I would suggest that there's going to be a rear-wheel drive version at some point, but for now, this is the flagship, and this has everything. So who knows what the price of the Ultra Performance with 22s and the fancy stereo and all that's going to be, but I would guess at least 150,000 on road in Australia, meaning it's sort of in a clear air between the top spec EV9 Kia and the Mercedes-Benz EQS that is many tens of thousands of dollars more than that. Now, as an electric 7-seat SUV, it actually is surprisingly competent, I would say. It's not as overtly sporting as the Polestar 3, but then it's not meant to be that either. Yet, it also has all the same features like the air suspension and the trick rear diff and all that sort of stuff. It is not slow, it's very quiet, it rides pretty well, even on these 22-inch wheels. In soft, it's not too soft. In firm, it's not too firm. I wouldn't want to say Goldilocks because I hate that term, but it does tread quite a fine line between trying to be and look a bit sporty, but also trying to be comfortable. It's not as cushy as the old XC90 T8 used to be, but I think that's actually a good thing because it benefits the body control of the vehicle. All of the safety systems work really well. The seats are reasonably comfortable. It's perhaps not as big or as plush as I was expecting, but I think that size does work in its favor because anything over 5 metres long in Australia, even as an SUV, is really starting to push the boundaries of what people can handle for themselves when they're driving and in their garage. So what we have here is a pretty impressive flagship for Volvo. I don't know where it's perhaps quite as luxurious as I was expecting, but I do like the design of it. I do like the fact that it does have Volvo DNA in the way it looks, and I think that Volvo buyers who very much are dyed-in-the-wool brand faithful will really like this vehicle. If you haven't subscribed, please do so below the video, hit the notification bell and tell us what you think about Volvo's first ever electric 7-seat SUV, the EX90, or about chasing cars. Thanks for watching.